R. G. Collingwood, 1889 to 1943, was an influential British philosopher and historian, most well known for his contributions to philosophy of history, philosophy of mind, and aesthetics. His work touches on many fields, and he was particularly concerned with how knowledge is acquired, the nature of historical understanding, and the role of philosophy in interpreting human experience. We can go over some of the essential lessons of Collingwood's philosophy. 1. Philosophy of history. One of Collingwood's central contributions was his philosophy of history, particularly his ideas about the nature of historical knowledge and the method by which history is studied. History is the study of human thought. Collingwood argued that history is not merely about recording events, it is about understanding the thoughts and intentions of the people who lived through those events. For him, history was a form of mental reconstruction. Historians interpret the past not by observing mere facts but by engaging with the thoughts of historical figures. This is encapsulated in his famous statement that, "History is the reenactment in the historian's mind of the thought whose history he is studying." Historical knowledge and interpretation. Collingwood believed that historical knowledge is interpretative, as opposed to scientific knowledge. Scientific facts can be observed and tested in the present, while historical facts are reconstructed through the interpretation of sources that belong to the past. Historical facts are not independent of human understanding, they are part of the intellectual landscape that historians attempt to reconstruct. The concept of historical objectivity. While Collingwood believed that objectivity in history is possible, it is not a matter of finding pure facts free of interpretation. Instead, objectivity comes from the historian's ability to reconstruct the past as the past was thought by its participants. In other words, objectivity in history is about understanding the context in which ideas were developed and actions were taken. 2. Philosophy of mind. Collingwood was also deeply engaged with the philosophy of mind, particularly in how human consciousness relates to action and understanding. The role of mental acts in human understanding. In his work An Essay on Metaphysics, 1940, Collingwood argued that to understand human consciousness, we must think in terms of mental acts. This means that the fundamental unit of experience and knowledge is not simply passive perception, but rather active, thinking engagement with the world. Collingwood rejected materialist accounts of mind and instead proposed that understanding human thought and experience requires an emphasis on mental activities that direct and shape our experience. The historical nature of thought. Collingwood also made the point that human thought evolves over time and that we cannot simply project contemporary concepts onto past thinkers. Instead, to understand their thought, we must reconstruct it in its historical context. His focus on the historical nature of thought ties back to his broader philosophy of history. 3. The philosophy of art and aesthetics. Collingwood's work in aesthetics, particularly his book The Principles of Art, 1938, stands out as one of his most influential contributions to philosophy. Art as expression. One of Collingwood's key claims in the philosophy of art is that art is an expression of emotion, and the role of the artist is to express their own inner emotions in a way that is understandable and meaningful to others. He argued that the value of art lies in its ability to convey the artist's emotions authentically. Art as communication of thought. For Collingwood, art is a way of communicating thoughts, not just emotions. This was a departure from previous aesthetic theories that focused solely on the emotional or sensory dimensions of art. He insisted that the artist's task is to express something that can be comprehended by others in a way that is both communicative and intelligible. The role of the audience in art. Another significant point Collingwood made was about the role of the audience in the interpretation of art. The audience, for Collingwood, does not simply passively receive the artwork but actively engages with it in order to grasp the artist's intention. This process of engagement involves reenacting the thoughts and emotions that motivated the creation of the artwork. 4. Ethics and political philosophy. Collingwood also engaged with ethical and political questions, particularly in the context of his understanding of human freedom and the nature of society. Ethics as the study of human action. Collingwood argued that ethics is concerned with human action and the way that humans relate to one another and to the world. For him, ethical questions were not just about following rules or commandments, they were about understanding the intentions behind actions and the way these intentions align with broader principles of justice and virtue. Freedom and responsibility. One of Collingwood's key themes was the idea that human freedom is inextricably tied to responsibility. He suggested that true freedom does not simply mean the ability to do whatever one wants but involves the ability to act in ways that are in harmony with the larger moral and political order. Political philosophy. In his political writings, Collingwood was interested in understanding the nature of political authority and governance. He was particularly concerned with the idea of democracy, which for him was not just about institutions but about the active participation of individuals in the process of governance. Democracy, according to Collingwood, is about fostering a community in which individuals can exercise their moral and intellectual capacities to contribute to the common good. 5. The critique of positivism and scientism. Collingwood's philosophy was deeply critical of positivism and the tendency in the early 20th century to treat the social sciences and the humanities as if they were natural sciences. In works like The Idea of History, 1946, Collingwood argued that human history, and by extension human social and political life, cannot be understood through the same methods used in the physical sciences. The limits of science. Collingwood maintained that positivism, by emphasizing empirical observation and the search for universal laws, misses the complexities of human life, which is shaped by thought, emotion, and individual intentionality. He argued that the natural sciences, while valuable, cannot capture the deeper aspects of human experience that are central to the humanities and social sciences. History as the reenactment of thought. Collingwood's central objection to positivism was that it reduces historical and humanistic inquiry to the same level as the study of natural phenomena. For him, history involves reenacting the thoughts of the people who lived in the past, and this is something that cannot be reduced to mere empirical observation or statistical analysis. 6. The legacy and impact of Collingwood. Although Collingwood's influence waned in the decades following his death, his ideas have experienced a resurgence in recent years, especially in the fields of history, philosophy, and aesthetics. His rejection of positivism, his emphasis on the historical nature of thought, and his conception of art as the communication of thought continue to inspire contemporary philosophers and historians. Influence in history. Collingwood's philosophy of history has been especially influential in historical methodology. His ideas about the interpretative nature of historical inquiry and his focus on understanding historical actors through their thoughts and intentions have had a lasting impact on historiography. His work paved the way for the new history, which emphasized the subjective dimensions of historical understanding. Legacy in aesthetics. Collingwood's contributions to aesthetics, particularly his theory of art as expression and communication, have been important in the development of 20th-century aesthetics. His ideas have influenced later thinkers such as Maurice Merleau-Ponty, who emphasized the embodied and expressive nature of art, and his ideas continue to resonate in contemporary debates over the meaning and function of art. 7. Major works of Collingwood. Some of Collingwood's most important works include The Idea of History, 1946, a posthumously published collection of his lectures on the philosophy of history. This work remains one of his most influential writings. An Essay on Metaphysics, 1940. In this book, Collingwood explores the nature of metaphysical inquiry and argues that metaphysics is ultimately concerned with the study of human consciousness and its activities. The Principles of Art, 1938, a key text in aesthetics. This work discusses the nature of art and the role of the artist in expressing emotion and thought. Speculum Mentis, 1924, a comprehensive work that attempts to map the different branches of knowledge, providing a framework for understanding the relationship between philosophy, history, and the sciences. 8. The nature of philosophy. Philosophy as the study of thought. Collingwood's view of philosophy was distinct from the way many contemporary philosophers approach it. He argued that philosophy is not merely a collection of abstract theories or specialized knowledge, but rather a study of the history of human thought. Philosophy, for Collingwood, is about understanding how humans have thought through and made sense of the world, and how those ideas shape our present understanding. Philosophy as the history of thought. Collingwood proposed that philosophy should be understood as a history of thought, rather than a set of speculative systems. This is connected to his broader view that all knowledge, whether philosophical, historical, or scientific, is rooted in the mind's processes. As such, philosophy becomes the study of how human beings think about their experiences and organize that thinking into systems of meaning. The historical method in philosophy. One of Collingwood's most important ideas was the application of the historical method to philosophy. He argued that to understand philosophical ideas, we must engage with them in the context in which they were first formulated. Rather than merely interpreting philosophical works as timeless truths, we must understand the historical situation, the intellectual conditions, and the problems the thinkers were addressing. Philosophy as the reenactment of thought. Collingwood's concept of philosophy aligns closely with his ideas about history. He believed that to understand a philosopher's thought, we must reenact that thought within our own minds. This means actively engaging with the thinker's ideas, putting ourselves in their intellectual position, and reconstructing the original problem or inquiry that motivated their philosophical work. Philosophy thus involves a dialectical process, wherein we not only understand the thoughts of others but also critically engage with and transform them. 9. The role of imagination in knowledge and creativity. Collingwood emphasized the crucial role of imagination in the processes of knowledge, historical inquiry, and artistic creation. For him, imagination was not just a passive faculty but an active, creative power integral to both understanding and making sense of the world. Imagination as an integral part of knowledge. Collingwood argued that imagination is a necessary tool for both historians and philosophers because it allows individuals to grasp the intentions and experiences of people in the past. Imagination, in this context, is not mere fantasy but an active faculty that enables us to reconstruct and reenact the thoughts, actions, and meanings of past people. Imagination in art. Collingwood's philosophy of art also places imagination at its core. Art, for him, is not just about representing the world as it is, but about expressing what cannot be immediately understood. The artist uses imagination to express ideas, emotions, and experiences that go beyond literal representation. Through art, imagination becomes a form of communication, as the artist conveys complex ideas and inner states in a way that transcends language and conventional thought. Imagination in history. For historians, imagination allows them to reconstruct the mental world of the past. Collingwood did not see history as merely a study of facts, but a process of imaginative engagement with the mental life of past individuals. Historians must use imagination to enter into the mental world of historical agents in order to reconstruct their thoughts and motivations. This imaginative process is key to achieving historical understanding. 10. Philosophy of science. The interaction between philosophy and scientific knowledge. Collingwood was not dismissive of science, but he was critical of the way in which science was sometimes treated as the only valid form of knowledge. He recognized the importance of scientific knowledge but believed that science, especially in the way it was becoming increasingly dominant during his time, could not offer complete insight into the human experience. The difference between science and philosophy. Collingwood acknowledged that the natural sciences provide essential knowledge about the world, especially about physical processes. However, he contended that philosophical inquiry addresses different kinds of questions, particularly those that involve human meaning, purpose, and understanding. While science can answer questions about how the world works, philosophy and history address the question of why the world is the way it is in terms of human experience and thought. The limits of scientific knowledge in human affairs. Collingwood believed that human affairs, including history, ethics, and art, cannot be fully explained by the methods of the natural sciences. Scientific knowledge is based on observation, measurement, and experimentation, but human action and thought require a different kind of understanding, one that is historical and interpretative. For Collingwood, the human sciences, such as history, psychology, and ethics, must be approached with methods that are more sensitive to the nuances of individual experience, intentionality, and meaning. Philosophy's role in bridging the gap. Collingwood's view was that philosophy has an important role in bridging the gap between science and the humanities. While science deals with the material world and its laws, philosophy can help us understand how scientific knowledge fits into the broader context of human life. Philosophy helps provide meaning and structure to scientific discoveries, and it considers the implications of those discoveries on human values and society. For Collingwood, philosophy is not opposed to science but complements it by addressing areas that science cannot. In conclusion, R.G. Collingwood's philosophy offers a profound and multifaceted exploration of human knowledge, history, art, and thought. Through his innovative ideas, Collingwood reshaped the way we understand the relationship between history and philosophy, emphasizing that both disciplines are deeply interconnected and rooted in human thought. His conception of history as the reenactment of past thought encourages historians to engage actively with the minds of historical figures, while his philosophy of mind highlights the active role of human consciousness in shaping our experiences. Collingwood's work in aesthetics underscores the importance of imagination, both in the arts and in our broader understanding of the world, challenging us to recognize how creativity and mental acts are at the core of both artistic expression and intellectual inquiry. Additionally, his critique of positivism and scientism reminds us that the social sciences and humanities require different approaches than the natural sciences, grounded in interpretation and historical context. Through his emphasis on the historical nature of philosophy, the role of imagination in both knowledge and creativity, and the distinct but complementary relationship between philosophy and science, Collingwood left a lasting legacy that continues to influence contemporary thought. His insights into the methods of historical inquiry, the nature of art, and the role of philosophy in interpreting human experience continue to provide valuable lessons for scholars across various disciplines. Ultimately, Collingwood's work challenges us to reconsider how we approach the study of history, art, and knowledge, urging us to engage with the past not just as a collection of facts but as a dynamic process of thought and meaning-making. His vision reminds us that understanding the human experience involves not only objective analysis but also empathy, imagination, and a deep engagement with the minds of others.